Feels like everyone needs a cup of coffee. All
Um,
right,
not
so
be
we're
say you
live.
lie. I was just about to. I was just. Are we live?
Yeah, we're live now.
Okay.
So real
Okay.
quick, I tagged everyone on Twitter. So if you can just quickly just retweet, say something like, "Oh, we're live now," so that people can join. But anyway, today is Tuesday, August. That's right, I said August, October 6th, and it's another episode of Serious Banter. Thank everyone for joining. Our crew will soon start joining. We usually have quite a number of people join and follow through the comment section. So this should be exciting. So I just in from feedback from your end. So today we are talking about focusing on Nigeria. We are talking about our history, our development, and our future. And and just full disclosure, even though we've not all read the book, part of the reason why I wanted to do this show was to because of Faye's new book coming out, Formation. I'll see if I get it correctly. From amalgamation to jihad.
You heard first.
From jihad to amalgamation.
From I don't know how you came up with that topic, but cool. I'm sure at some point we'll talk about it. But today we want to talk about and Independence Day was last week. So typically the way it works on Serious Band. So we're going to talk about everything from how we became Nigeria to what development means for us and where we are going. So Justin, maybe you can set the expectation and what you're looking for today.
Why are you setting me up? We're basing today's show off of Facebook. That honor should go to Faye. Anyway, welcome to Serious Banter today. It was just timely that several things coincided: independence, the buzz about Faye's upcoming book, and some things that we've been talking about backstage, Timbola and myself. So we thought we should do a show and address some of the very topical issues. I mean, I don't know that there's any Nigerian today that is apolitical. It's practically impossible to be a Nigerian and not be in the thick of the conversation. The difference being some people don't talk about it in public, some people always talk about it in public, but put two Nigerians together, where Bola and I are a very good proxy. And we are talking about Nigeria. And when we say Nigeria, you know what we mean. Niger, all our issues. So today's topic basically gives us a window to delve into those issues from, if you like, a historical perspective. So how did we come to be? Some people have referred to it as a geographical expression. I mean, as many as we are, when you ask, Nigeria means several things to several people. So hopefully this conversation will give us a platform to understand from a multiplicity of perspectives, what does Nigeria mean to you? Where did we come from? How did we get here? What our challenges are, and from our own individual perspectives, where do we go from where we are? This is more of a continuation of a conversation thread that we've been having on Serious Banter, because if you actually look back, you can link this to several topics that we've talked about. So yeah, that's essentially what today is about. Bola, back to you.
All right, thank you, Justin. So before we get going on this show, we always tell people we don't introduce anyone. Now your hand, you go take use talk your matter. So before as we are going to about to start now, I just want everyone to spend 3 minutes, tell us what you want us to know about you and what Nigeria as a term or concept or whatever means to you. So sort of like your opening argument. This show we don't. It's not typically a Q and A. We have a conversation. The guests, the host can ask each other questions. You guys can ask me questions. I ask you questions. You can ask each other questions. But the key thing is we're trying to talk about how we came to be as a country, what development looks like, and what does the future hold for us. What one quick story I was going to add. I was coming back from, I think, Dubai one time, going to Lagos, and I was in the airport in Egypt, and there were a bunch of Nigerians trying to board a flight to Abuja, and a couple of them from the obviously from the north. No offense or anything, I was just like, sound different. The demeanor is different, and somebody would say, "Oh, we are from the same country." So, with no offense. So my point is, in some cases, we don't even feel or look the same, but we also say we are from the same country. So, what does Nigeria mean to you? But before you get into that, kind of walk us through, you know, who you are and whatever it is you want to share with everyone. So, who wants to go first? Faye is always ready. So maybe Faye, as the elder statesman, just help us out and go first.
Okay, so my day job, I'm an accountant. I work in financial services at the moment, but I left Nigeria about coming up to 17 years ago now. But I keep in touch. I visit as often as possible, and generally, I mean, online, I think I interact with Nigerians far more than even people here in the UK where I live. So I've, I've, I feel like I have an unbroken connection to Nigeria, and it's constantly evolving. I started writing again about Nigeria probably about 11 years ago, thereabouts, and just started off with writing a blog, and then that became the newspaper column, and then different.
that you stopped doing. Oh no, there was newspaper review.
So that's top. Yeah. So I did that newspaper column for a few years, and then I've written for a few newspapers. Well, all my writing has mainly been about Nigeria. So a couple of years ago, I just my friend and I just thought, I mean, my co-author, Fola, he's invested a lot in knowing about Nigeria in terms of he's got a very good library going. He's been reading about pretty much anything, any kind of history about Nigeria for a long time. So just thought, you know what, we should make something out of this since it's an interest we shared. So we decided where can we add value the most? And when we come to the question of Nigeria, for example, we celebrated our independence 60 years. A lot of people, obviously, because the population is very young, and we kind of always have a young population. So every time, like half of the population is like 18 or younger. When you have that kind of demographic, you have to do the work of constantly reminding people of their history. But we've not done that very well. We don't teach history. And even then we don't, because there's not much demand for history like that, the supply of history is consequently has shrunk. So unlike in the immediately before independence and after independence, when there was a strong anti-colonial movement, and the fact that people needed to have a sense of pride in who they were. So we produced the golden age of historians. But since then, it's been, we've not hit those heights again. So we just thought, okay, well, where can we add value? We thought the pre-colonial period, it's something most people don't talk about. I mean, at best, you probably get, most people will go back, say, okay, the north and south of Nigeria was amalgamated in 1914, and then we became one country. But when you ask people about what happened before then, most people are kind of like sketchy about it. But what we found was that, actually, a lot of Nigeria's character today, what we know as the character of the country today, was actually formed in, the period before colonialism, and obviously the period when the Europeans had arrived, and then which led up to amalgamation. So, when you read the book, you'll see a lot of patterns that are very, very familiar to anyone today. So I think we just thought it was a neglected part of our history, and that people will benefit from knowing that. And it's funny because, I mean, we joke about it that, we've written a history book and we are almost marketing it like a mystery, which is really funny when you think about it. I mean, I can't go to America, for example, and say, "Oh, I've written a book about 19th century America," but when you read it, you'll find out. Or I don't want to spoil it for you. What are you going to say? The average American knows, has a very good idea of what their country's history is. They know. I mean,
what is deep in the school curriculum? Like, I don't care what you want to study, you will learn American history and government. Even if you hate it. So yeah.
So in Nigeria's case, a lot of that part of our history has kind of like been neglected, and so we hope that people will learn something new. And hopefully, there seems to be a groundswell of history, of demand for history right now. So there's a lot of people are putting in the work. So there's a documentary on Netflix at the moment where, I mean, everyone has been watching it. So there seems to be, so we hope that, I mean, that this will add to the conversation, and that when people read it, they'll be, they'll want to learn more, and then they'll go deeper into that. So yeah, that's me. Let me stop rambling now.
All right. Thank you very much. We're going to dive deep into some of the things that you mentioned, and some of, again, yes, we've not read the book, but the topic, it's like you said, it's not a mystery. Though it was sort of a mystery when Burna Boy talked about the UAC stuff about that people were like, oh wow, so Nigeria was bought. That also tells me that a lot of people need to learn their history. Okay, so
truth be told, I mean, just to jump in there, truth be told, it's actually that erasure actually is a fairly recent development. I studied history in secondary school, and a lot of all that, those missing gaps occurred in the years, started from the tail end of the Babangida era, really, when they started tinkering around with the educational curriculum, and eventually in the democratic dispensation of all times, they got rid of history from the curriculum altogether. But if you step back one generation, you find out that people actually did study Nigerian history, albeit from a very warped and sectional perspective. I mean, just putting that out there.
Yep.
All right. So Sarata, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hello, Saratu. What do I even do, Sif? I work as an agricultural policy
Don't worry, I often ask
analyst.
myself the same thing.
Legitimately, like anytime after 6 p.m. I forget. Like, give me a nap after work, and I don't even remember. I'm like, oh, wait a second. But yeah, agricultural policy. I run an advocacy project on agricultural policy. It's national level. Yeah, that's the day job. My interests tend to be let's see, issues concerning culture, concerning rights, human rights more generally, and what the thing that particularly animates me in general is how we came to be, but not necessarily, like almost like an alternate history. Nigerians, we tend to see the question of how we came to be as a series of political happenings. But undergirding all of these political happenings are a series of cultural happenings. And these things tend to feed into each other. So for example, structural adjustments and basically the IBB, I think, created the ground and wetted the ground for a lot of what we understand as modern day Nigeria. This idea that It's not by how hard you work, it's who you know. The kind of those extensive patronage systems, all over the country. And what has that done? I mean, we tend to understand that as a political happening, but that also shaped our culture as well. It shaped the way we have become as people. For example, what happens when people no longer believe in the link between hard work and success? What does that do to a people, right? What happens is that you get people who are willing to get money and get position and power through just about any means they can. It's not, and they can enter church today in jalopy and tomorrow in a Rolls Royce. No one's going to ask any questions because, hey, the guy has money, and they kind of get rich. Get rich or die trying. Ideas that we tend to have are shaped.
Please, I'm on the show. Okay,
so
keep the noise down.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Like, just one example. Like, like if you think about the way women's rights organizations in Nigeria were a lot stronger in the military era than now, and in the democratic. In a lot of ways, it's emblematic of the way our civil society and human rights work hasn't been able to respond to the question of elite capture. So there's a lot of things there's a lot of ways in which our politics has shaped, who we've become, but ways that we don't often think about. And those things kind of, animate me as well. There's a link between the way that we as people, the normalization of state violence, and then the way that it's even seeped into, non-state, just non-state interactions as well. Like, I don't know what, because some of the examples of, when the really casual way that we talk about, for example, what happened in NYSC, and some army guys taking ruthless advantage of their position, or some in boarding school, and the way that people, the kind of violence that was normalized in schools. I don't think that those things are necessarily can be necessarily removed from each other. So I mean, those things tend to interest me a lot, and I think that there's we are very much you talked about Bola about Nigeria being some people are just so different even though we're in the same country. But I don't know, like I work in the north. I've traveled all over the region, and I work in the north. I know that there's generally a sense among some folks down south that folks in the north have are able to get the politicians to bend to their will a little bit better. I've not seen that, I have to say. There's still the same frustrations with the gap between government and citizens. The civic, like there's a huge, in fact, I'm currently working on OGP work in northern states. The reason that the meeting I told you I was doing today was working on open governance work in Adamawa and Kebbi State and Taraba State. So I've done a fair bit of work in places across the country, and when I go down south, I hear the same challenges. Not to be super simplify and say we're all the same, because we're not. There are nuances, okay. But I just we are a lot more similar than we think we are, is what I think. We're very much one country.
Let's park that for a second, because I would like to litigate that later on. Let's just park that for a second. All right. So say it again. Say your name again.
Fakria.
I'm a Muslim. I'm having a hard time remembering your name. Fakria. I won't forget again. All right. So take it away. So tell us about yourself. What does Nigeria mean to you? And if you want to draw to any of the things you've heard so far, please go ahead. Once you're done, Justin will chime in a little bit, and then we'll get in full gear into the whole gist of what we're discussing.
Well, thank you so much for having me. A lot of the things Faye and Sarah mentioned today sort of captured some of the things I've been, thinking about lately. Well, I just finished my master's in London, but before that, I was in Nigeria, most of my work has been around social development, to do with mostly online activism, well, as something I just do on my own, to do with social issues, like gender-based violence, governance, but mostly concentrated in northern Nigeria. So lately, I find myself like really questioning the makeup of just northern Nigeria, especially its relationship with religion, right? Because I mean, I find myself, in the middle of um, you know, the chaotic result of how what we are today and our relationship with religion. And and then just looking to see how Saudi Arabia sort of influenced that aspect of us, and how they've managed to sort of um, keep themselves sort of together. I mean, thanks to the autocracy, they're able to maintain, that religious power over their own people. Whereas, in northern Nigeria, we haven't been able to do that, because there isn't that very central power. As much as we allude a lot of things to the political powers that be in northern Nigeria, but it's very different. And even when
Oh no.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and even when what I've essentially seen is that we sort of we collectively believe that the political elite sort of drive everything, but in essence, a lot of the power that's compounded by the elite is sort of the religious elite rather than the political elite in northern Nigeria. But the reason we don't really it's not very visible is because wealth isn't really concentrated amongst these religious figures and communities. So it's easy to sort of overlook that. And how that has sort of shaped what northern Nigeria has become today. I mean, we've seen recently with these judgments that are very unjust being passed to young people that are accused of blasphemy. So I mean, just that contradiction that lies between how justice is driven in northern Nigeria and the southern Nigeria, and what that really reproduces is of particular interest to me. And especially that when you take the two Nigerias aside. Well, I mean, I'm sorry for having to say the two Nigerias, but I'm talking
No,
about
no,
the
no, no, no. It's a good point, because we're going to go there.
dominant, yeah. And you take northern Nigeria in its majority on its own, and a lot of the issues that Nigeria is facing today, it's like it's doubled in the north. Because when you look at every development index, most of it is in Nigeria. The poverty percentage, the out of school children, the underemployed, the underskilled, all of it is in northern Nigeria. And so I try to like look at other countries that sort of if we take northern Nigeria on its own, what countries is it comparable to? And you have places like Somalia and Niger and Chad, some of the most undeveloped um countries and regions around the world. And it's like where it feels like we're at the very bottom, because there isn't much proactiveness in how do we shift all of these millions and millions of people from this position to something more empowered. And is it are we even willing to, are we even looking at things from, other perspectives that can actually drive some sort of shift. So, I mean, to wrap that up.
Very, very, very good point, and your point is valid. We'll obviously get into a lot of this. I'm sure Sarah has one or two things to point out. But Justin, you heard the opening statements. Do you have anything to add? Do you have any questions? Do you have a way to direct us? I certainly have some things to ask, but do you have a way to direct us so we can get in gear fully?
Well, I'll just say that I can empathize with what Fakria was trying so hard to articulate, and I understand you trying to work on eggshells. But first things first, at Serious Banter, we're not exactly very politically correct. We're not reckless, but we're not politically correct. We like to say it as it is. Yes, there are two Nigerians and Nigerias, and you don't need to be apologetic about it, because even constitutionally, we operate two systems of laws. We have the penal code and we have the criminal code for the two different Nigerias. So technically, you're actually very right. And I mean, you almost took us right into the middle of the conversation about where we are. So I would like us to backtrack and still come at it gradually from how did we get here?
How did we get here? Yes.
Where we're coming from. Yes, where we're coming from. That man that a lot of Nigerians like to swear for, the man that is still not, he has died a long time ago, but Nigerians say he no go die better. One Lord, something. That they say something.
Now you talk about let's talk to Faye a little bit. Faye, I know you did a lot of research and you put a lot of stuff in your book. The concept of power, I feel like it's probably central to all of the things that happened even before amalgamation. So, in this context of Nigeria history and how we came to be and where we are now, can you take power as kind of like a base, like power, political power, particularly? Maybe you want to add how culture or religion added to it, but what the power situation was back then, and how everything got us towards where we got to. Amalgamation and afterwards and all the way to independence. Can you talk to how, because I know it's the Oyo Empire, the Northern Empire, and all those places, right? So if you take power, and then kind of lead the conversation from how power, what power looked like and how power led to all of what eventually transpired.
Okay, so interesting question. So our story starts in 1804, which is the year the jihad kicked off in Gobir, in today's Sokoto. So at that time, the Benin Empire had passed its peak, so it was already in decline, at the beginning of the 19th century. The Oyo Empire as well was already, starting to disintegrate at the beginning of the 19th century as well. But the northern states, with the exception of the Kanem Borno Empire, which was, I would say, most of it wasn't really what we would call Nigeria today. So it was kind of linked to the Sahara and Northern Africa, that sort of thing. But it was at that point, that beginning of the 19th century, when the Oyo and the Benin were already in decline. That was when the consolidation of the North began. So these jihadis, you think of it that this was just a bunch of guys with pretty much nothing other than serious determination, right? They didn't even have weapons, they just had maybe bows and arrows, but the kind of fierce determination they had allowed them to actually take on a government that had 100,000 soldiers on foot and win. So the jihad, it started from Sokoto, but it spread out to all of what we know as the North today. So pretty much all the way to Adamawa. And by the time the Caliphate had formed, it had become the largest state in sub-Saharan Africa. Right, which is the reason why we kind of started our story there. It was kind of like the first major attempt at consolidating a huge part of what we know as Nigeria today, right? So the Oyo Empire obviously was pretty much limited to the southwest. The Benin Empire was limited to the southwest, south. But the Caliphate, the Sokoto Caliphate, it crossed from northwest to northeast. So it consolidated a huge part of the north, and then came down as well to the middle belt, to what we know as Nupe today. So that was if you were to take the idea of power, what it meant at that time. So this was the consolidation of a huge part of the country and forming it into an actual state. A state with a governing idea. So they had. These guys were very, very well read. The leaders of the jihad, they were very, very well read. They were very exposed, so they were able to organize the state they had built along the lines of the Abbasid Caliphate, which was like a 1,000-year-old caliphate from. So they organized. They had a very, very good idea of what they wanted to do. So basically, the Sultan in Sokoto, emirs, across all the different who paid tribute to Sokoto. So effectively, a president and governors, if you like. So that organization of state was quite an advanced system. The Oyo as well had it. They had their own very, very advanced governing system as well. Same with Benin and different other parts. But I think one of the lessons we can learn from that today is that a lot of people always talk about breakup of Nigeria and that kind of thing. I think we there's no need to speculate in terms of what it would be like. History has very, very good examples for when the Oyo Empire disintegrated. It didn't disintegrate into 2 pieces or 3 pieces. It scattered. It scattered into different pieces, and even in the Benin Empire as well. By the beginning of the 19th century, the Shekiris were like pretty much toe to toe with them, challenging them. So, we can always, if you consolidate power in Nigeria, it's difficult to hold together. But if you lose control of it, then, there's no one can actually tell you that, oh, we're going to get out of this empire. We're going to get people. People always talk about Nigeria breakdown. They say, "Oh, Southwest." It's generally assumed that the Southwest will just go, as one state, or even the South will go as one state, or Southeast, or that sort of thing. But all through our story, what we find is that there's a streak of independence in almost every group in Nigeria. There's just this kind of, even in the north, even at the time when the Caliphate had, conquered the whole of the north and was now running a proper state, there were people who refused to submit to them for 100 years that the Caliphate was in power. There are so many groups, like small, groups here and there who just not accept. They don't want to be dominated by anybody. They want their independence. And it was one of the things that the British took advantage of when they came. So they just basically promise you that, look, if you help us here, it was one of the stories we showed quite well that, if you help us here, we'll give you independence. And people will just jump at it that, oh, the fact that, okay, these guys have been dominating us for a while. If you promise to give us independence, then we'll support you to overthrow them. So that whole streak of independence, it runs through. If there's one thing that you can almost say is the Nigerian character, it's that one thing. People just don't. It's a very, very difficult country for one person to dominate, and you can see it today. Even the federal government, they talk a lot. They project power, that kind of thing. But like I always say with my friends, that Buhari as a president, his powers are really negative when you think about it. So Buhari, for example, cannot say order the toilets in the airport must be clean, and he said basically say I want the toilets in the airport transformed to be clean, and they must be like world class or something. Maybe if you are lucky, they will do it for 1 month. After that, it goes back to nonsense again or something. You see it all the time. Buhari orders this, Buhari orders that. What he can do, what the power of the presidency in Nigeria is really good at is blocking stuff. So maybe you want to collect something and then they will just, the president can deny you something. But to actually say from the office of the president to actually make a pronouncement and be a force for good is very, very difficult. You know, I mean, we see what happened last year, for example, during the campaign when Buhari went to Benue to campaign, and then it was when he got there that that people told him that the Inspector General of Police that he told to go and what did he tell him to go and do? It was while he was there that Buhari was now apologizing.
He asked him. He asked him to relocate to the
He
front
asked
line of
to relocate. It was while he was there that Buhari was now apologizing that the guy I told to relocate he actually never relocated. You know, so it's very, very difficult to wield power, especially as a positive force, or to be able to speak to the Nigerian people with nothing but words. You know, like I mean, other countries, you know, you have presidents that can say, you know, leaders that can say, look, we need to do this thing, and then the people you generally get
that can galvanize people,
exactly. So
even if it's symbolic.
Exactly, it's symbolic, you know, but it's very, very difficult in Nigeria for that because we've never really power has not been developed in that way. You know, one of the things we talk about a lot in the book is that you can take Nigeria's history if you take away the period of democracy we've had since 1999 to now, 20 years now, it's 200 years of military rule. You know, that, I mean, and when you have military rule as the way of wielding power, then, you know, somebody who can speak, who can galvanize people will not go far in a system like that. You know, that kind of skill is not valued. The status of such a skill is low. Now, we are getting to the point now, because we've now had democracy, it's stable. We've had it for 2 decades now. You are not going to get power by carrying a gun, you know, like a soldier or something. So now you can see that slowly, I mean, it's still very slow, but slowly politicians are learning that you just have, even if you are lying, you have to be able to speak to people and get in their head, you know, and convince them. In place of that, where they don't know how to do it yet, obviously that's why you're getting politicians obviously just buying votes and that sort of thing. But even that, at some point, is going to run out as a, you know. So we've had this whole period, and then that whole period of, if you take 200 years of military, it just means that we've overused violence as a tool for, you know, for solving problems. You see it all through the whole, you know, violence has been overused as a tool.
Would you say violence or force?
It was the same thing, violence or force, you know. So basically, so many times the political process, you know, I mean, violence is basically an indication that the political process has broken down. That's what that's what it is. So if two people, for example, are disputing a throne, you know, and they enter a room, they can't settle it, and then they go out, they will fight. You know, so the political process, you know, has failed so many times, and whereby we then have situations whereby violence is an overused tool, and it has left a huge cultural imprint on Nigeria. Which, I mean, I think we are slowly, like I said, it's very slow, but we're slowly moving away from that. There's an acceptance now, and you know, I mean, just to make a last point, one thing I always say is, if you have a country like Nigeria where half of the population is 18 or younger, you know, it does not take very long for the majority of the population to have a different worldview. You know, so the example I like to use is oil. So now, for example, oil prices began to crash in August 2014. So in August 2014, early August, they were almost $100, $90 plus, you know, after we had enjoyed it for about 3 or 4 years. Since then, they've been coming down. They're obviously now 30, 40, that sort of thing. So that's 6 years already. Now, if you have a population whereby, you know, half of the population is 18 years old or younger, then you can see that in a matter of 12 years' time, let's say think the demographics of the country remain the same. In a matter of 12 years' time, we will have the majority of the population who don't know anything about what $100 oil is. It's not their business. They've never seen it. So yeah, they've never seen it. And it might even be earlier than that, because, I mean, when do people begin to say, if we take the age and say, when somebody begins to know about oil, and say, let's just say 10 years old. You know, so in a matter of,
I don't think we're ever going back there.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think that time is done. It's not going to. We're not going to. No more $100 oil type of thing. So very
Yeah.
soon, we're getting to the point where very soon the majority of the population, the idea of, I mean, oil, as just the thing gushing like, it will just be a distant. People right now they don't have any relationship with it. So we're getting to that point. I mean, in 2017, we crossed a milestone which was remarkable. For the first time in Nigeria's history, or well, since oil revenues could not pay salaries alone. So all the oil revenues could not pay salaries. So we really crossed the bridge already. We're just right now. We're just running on fumes, that sort of thing. So you see, like, trying to pass PIB again. That ship has sailed. So we are now having a.
So right now it's all vibes now. Like it's all,
So before you know what's happening, we're going to get to the point where everybody will just realize that oil is never done anything for me in my whole life. I don't know what it's all about. It's not my business, and people begin to find. So when you have a young population like that, one of the advantages is that you can move away quickly from a paradigm. If you had a situation, for example, say you had a country whereby the population there was a very, very old population, which is like a lot of Western countries, and old people, they vote, to change minds in that kind of thing. People will remember something from, and then they are formed, they are set in their ways. But in Nigeria, it's, so that's one of the things I have hope about, the fact that we have a young population, and we've now had 20 years of democracy. It's a very imperfect democracy, but at least we've clearly left something behind, which is this use of force as the way to obtain power. So now people are growing up under the idea that
Sarasu does not agree.
Have we really? Have we? I understand that there's a groundswell and there's a paradigm shift, but I don't think we're at the point where we can
paradigm shift. So
left it behind.
It's just a reality. Now people are growing up under the idea that carrying a gun is not how you are going to obtain power anymore. I mean, we have violence in our elections. Right now, it is, there are many ways, So basically, you bribe voters.
Sarati is about to bust. Can you let that come in?
No. Please, let's Mr. Faway finish.
Well, so I think having a young population and then having 20 years of an imperfect democracy, I think we are over time. I think that we'll get to the point whereby new skills, people will need to develop new skills of how to obtain power. You at some point you are going to get to the point where even if like I said, even if you are lying, you are going to have to speak to people and talk to them, and convince them, even if it's with lies, convince them. But the idea that fellow Nigerians, is, I mean, I think we've put that behind us, and where you can just basically, because you seize power by force, you can then bully the whole population and then cower them, just like how people lived under fear, under Abacha, or under military rule in general. So now, I mean, we're a bit freer, now. I mean, it's not perfect.
Sorry, let me come in again. Are you saying what just happened in Mali cannot? Are you saying what just happened in Mali, for instance, cannot happen here again?
I hope it cannot happen.
I mean, we just had a coup. We just had a coup in Mali. Some guys, some khaki boys.
I hope it cannot happen in Nigeria. I mean, I'm positive, but
optimistic.
I'm optimistic that I hope it can, but I'm optimistic. If I was to take a bet, I'll say it can't happen. I'll be willing to bet small money on that.
I'm particularly.
I share the positive sentiment, but when I put on my pragmatist cap, I see us literally begging for it to happen. There's a set of people that I like to call the class of 66. So sorry, Sarato, I'm going to shut up in a minute. Let me just express this. There's a set of people I like to call
No.
66. They are in my book, which I have not written, unlike Faye. In my book, They are
Right?
the primary, hopefully. In my book, they are the primary antagonists to everything that we have gone through and that we are going through. When you step back, I won't go back as far as Faye has gone, but if you step back just from independence to date, we literally have a single generation of Nigerians, or a generation and a half. So when you take out the Awolowos and the Azikiwes and the Nahoro,
Justin, well, are you there? We're listening to you.
instrument
Yeah, I can't hear.
You can hear. I don't know if it's my internet or his internet.
Yeah,
our
nor can I.
nationhood from
I thought it was my own third world internet.
the British colonialists, and then proceeded to start.
Yeah.
All right, he'll join
no.
us. He'll come back on. He'll come back on. Saratu, I know you've been chopping a bit to say something. Please.
Okay. All right. So I largely agree with Faye. But I want to add flesh to a couple of points. So it's really great because Faye has a really good view from, kind of like expansive. But I work at state level. And I think what it's actually worse than Faye is saying. I don't know if he's being really nice about it. It's worse than what he's saying because even at the state level, there is also that same thing that Faye was talking about, where Buhari would say, "I want all the toilets clean tomorrow," and maybe you'll be clean tomorrow, but the day after that, it's not going to be clean. Same thing in the states, though. It's not any better at the state level. If the governor says, "In this local government, I want this done," yes, sir, and then he turns around and then it's not happening. And this is even in states in Nigeria. Majority of Nigerian states are insolvent because the largest industry, quote unquote, is civil service. Most people are civil servants, civil servants with a small farm on the side. And as we all know, agriculture in Nigeria, is a key driver of poverty. So they're not even producing at a level where you can even say that's a legitimate business. You understand? So it's still, it's pretty much civil service states. So even in places where government is big, quote unquote, in those states, and there's a skeletal private sector, not a whole lot of private sector activity going on, or majority of states are not Lagos or even Delta or any of those kinds of states. Even there, when the government says do this, it doesn't necessarily happen like that. Which is why I think perhaps the picture is a little bit more complicated in terms of wielding power, right? Because we talk about power, I'm thinking of legitimacy. I mean, one leads to another. One is a subset of the other, but the other doesn't necessarily translate. One of the tools of my work, we do power analyses, and when we talk about power analyses, one of the things that I always want when I'm doing my trainings with local grassroots actors, one of the things I'm always trying to drill into their minds is that just because someone has power doesn't mean they have legitimacy. Two very different things, right? So how do you build legitimacy is a separate question from how do you obtain power, right? So the thing in Nigeria is that a lot of political leaders use those who have legitimacy to gain power, right? So now, if that's the case, you see this picture really, clear at the local levels, where the people that are actually doing a lot, who have, the work of going into the communities, shaking hands, convincing people when these people talk, the generality of the community around them will listen. Those people, the way political parties are structured are such that those people are never or will never really be allowed to kind of rise to the top, usually. Now, if you know, so basically there's a certain kind of people who are likely to gain power. Those people tend to have more money than those who have legitimacy, right? Now, if that's the case, with that local political economy, what that essentially means is that those who have legitimacy, if we're going to have a situation where power the nature of power changes, then we need someone who gains power who's interested in gaining legitimacy. Now, for that to happen, the person has to actually be interested in governance. The actual work that they are supposed to be doing when they go over there and say they want to be governor or senator or House of Rep or whatever. But majority of these people are only really interested in power. Now, what does this have to do with things like use of violence and force? When someone has power but not legitimacy, you cannot enter a room and talk to these people and they will listen to you. It doesn't work that way. Now, if there then becomes a rift between the people that have legitimacy and the people that have power in a certain place, then the person that has power will use power because that's all they have. People that have legitimacy don't have to use power in that really crude way that we understand it. Of oh yeah, police, go and do this for me, right? Or oh yeah, army, quote this. And it's bringing it right down to really micro level interaction, right? There's people who do not believe, and I'm going to use as a stand-in, gender, right? There's people who do not really talk to women, not really. So the way that they interact, and as a woman, I see this in my everyday interaction. So for example, there was one time that I bought a phone. I went back home to test it. After I bought it, and he tested it at the place and it was working. I went back home and it wasn't working. So I went back the next day and said, "Okay, this phone that you sold me I'm not able to make calls out of it." You know what this guy told me? He told me, "Oh, call your husband. I'll talk to your husband." Didn't want to talk to me. Why is that? That's because in his mind, you can't talk to a woman. What does she know? I beg, what am I going to talk to this man to do? I don't talk to women. I've also seen a situation, this actually happens a lot, whereby there are men who, there was a friend of mine got really angry because a man crashed into her car. And when she got down, said, look at all of this. I was how you just jumped out of the Kinigi, even trafficate. The man said, "I don't talk to women. Call your husband, I'll talk to him. And I'll give him the money, the insurance details to handle your car." But he refused to talk to her. What does that mean? That means that in a situation like that, you don't believe that this person can talk to you, that this person can, that you can even understand, rationalize anything that this person is saying. That's that's like a micro level version of what happens with people that have power but not legitimacy. So these people are complaining, they're shouting. I don't know what they do. These people just shouting, just carrying placard up and down. So a person that has power but not legitimacy, anything that you say cannot be understood. You may as well be speaking gibberish. You're speaking Chinese. When someone has legitimacy, they can relate with you and can engage with you, and as such can make you do things that perhaps you wouldn't be willing to do, but they could drag your horse to the water well and make the horse drink. Right? That's the difference here. The reason why we have the situation that we have in Nigeria now, in a lot of states, we don't see this in the news very often, but there's a lot of conflict in states that don't make it to the papers. People complaining, protests that happen. I'll be on my way from my hotel to the airport, and I'm usually in most states I'm driving past a protest of some sort. People are complaining at everywhere. There's so much happening, but you'll be very hard pressed to find somebody actually the person in power engaging with the people protesting. They'd rather do with the people that have legitimacy with those people, because they at least have the understanding, the self-aware ones among them understand that they do not have legitimacy with certain constituencies, even within their states. So now, if you take that to national level, you're a president. You very likely do not have legitimacy all over Nigeria. You very likely do not. Does that make sense, Bala? So, so now what that means is that that's why, on the one hand, I do agree with Faye that the way that people understand power, has to change and is changing. But I don't think it's changing in the way that the use of violence is necessarily, seen as, eyed askance. I don't think so. It's just changed. That has also changed. Our attitude to using that has changed. The reason why I don't believe that the use of power is necessarily, kind of seen as a little outdated, is because there's still that gap between those who have power and those who have legitimacy. There's the Venn diagram. If we were to draw that Venn diagram of people that are in power that have legitimacy, there are very few intersecting points. Very few. So until that gap is closed, and that's a question of political power, reforming the way our political parties behave, and the kind of reforming it and designing it differently so that the kind of people that gain power through those systems, are much likelier those that have legitimacy in certain places. That's a very different question, I think. But the use of power and the use of force is still very much around. And it's changed, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily better. Which it's still, and especially because, for me, I tend to take my cues from what's happening at ground level. Because if you think about it, we don't like it when people say it, but our politicians are very much a reflection of who we are at our worst. And because we haven't changed all that much in terms of the way we understand power and our use of force and our belief in force as a people, I also don't believe that our politicians have either. I'm going to stop there.
Okay, I have a question. Out of everything now, my question is basically, what gives, that individual or a group legitimacy? Because from what you've said, elections doesn't give you legitimacy, and and they're in communities and stuff that you find people very much listen to individuals. It could be because of their age and how embedded within their community they are, or through religion, or even wealth, that people listen to them without them being forceful on people. But then those people that have that, if that is what legitimacy is, they can without force make their constituents actually impact violence, right?
Absolutely. If you have legitimacy among a group of people that you believe that another group of people are sort of encroaching on your territory, you can use your legitimacy to incite your people into force against another group. That absolutely happens all the time. But in terms of how do people show legitimacy?
Can I jump in?
Yeah, sure.
So I think it's a bit of a slippery slope if we start to discuss a lack of legitimacy in a democratic context, even if the democratic context is a dysfunctional or a suboptimal one like we have in Nigeria. Because traditionally, when you talk about a lack of legitimacy, you're typically talking about a situation where the instruments of state have been seized by force. In other words, you didn't seek the mandate of the people. And you, by way
I'm
of
gonna see
gun,
a different way, Justin. I'm even seeing some more like a birthright legitimacy.
Well, let me just land that thought. Or, at the risk of trying to mansplain, maybe. So when you were talking, Saratu, I was reframing what you were saying because the predominant thought in my head was, no, this is not what legitimacy is. I was saying to myself, okay, maybe she's talking about credibility. Because then I would agree that, yes, a lot of our politicians, a lot of the people who occupy elective positions lack credibility with a whole swathe of the populace. But when you introduce legitimacy, like Fakria was trying to ask, the question I would push back with is, are you saying that these people, because if you look at our politicians, one of the predominant threads in political discourse in Nigeria is, if you point to any politician from any part of the country today and what this person is doing wrong, this is what this person is doing wrong, somebody from some part of the country will tell you, we like him like that, i.e. my thief is okay as long as is my thief.
Or
right?
is it because it's not from here? That's why you're saying that.
Exactly. So we become sectional about it. So I'm saying that to say that whoever you point to has legitimacy with his constituency. Whether he's delivering the goods of democratic governance or not is a secondary question that we can address, because that's clearly a problem area. You understand? But when it comes to legitimacy, they will tell you that, listen, my people voted for me. And that is what gives it. But are you credible? Are you doing the work of governance? We all know what the answer to that is.
Okay, I have a question.
I don't mean credibility in that kind of romantic sense of and by the way, maybe our words are just different. I do mean it could very much synonymous to credibility when I say legitimacy. But I don't mean it in a very romantic sense of my people love me. But are you a person that when you go into your community, people recognize you as of them? And it's, I mean, political season is usually a really good way of finding out who is someone that is deemed legitimate in that particular place, because when the politicians want to get votes in that place, that's what they call, right? Now, in Nigeria, it's very much currency that you trade. I had said earlier about how women's rights organizations suffered after the military era, and really, I think civil society in general, but women's rights organizations is what I know. It kind of illustrates this issue whereby during the military era, there was one enemy, the military, the big bad military, right? And so it wasn't very easy to have someone within that institution, that's basically for you, and that would bend rules for you, really. So it was it was a lot more black and white. These people are for us, whereas those people are over there. So it was easier for women's rights organizations to mobilize and do fundraising and engage with people because it was clear who they were for. You understand? It's not like today where these ones are probably just, I mean, the real inflection point was, IBB's wife, and what she did with the Police Wives Association. And that was really the first time. And that's why I say IBB was, super, like, he's very important to understanding what IBB, did, and made possible is very important to understanding Nigeria today, right? But in the run up to that, you can see that there was a lot more of a black and white thing where civil society was kind of more, I mean, we understood who these people were, the activists, these ones that army doesn't like any of these people. So, we was very clear who they were, right? Now, it was easier for these people to build the legitimacy among people, showing themselves to be of them. And it's hard to be of the other side, really, back then, at least within that space. That was a bit of a, all these people that went to Russia and came back, those communist, Marxist, advocates people, you understand? So it was a lot, it was a very different set of people from those who were perhaps, in the army. So it was a lot clearer of a line. So it was easier for people to kind of build the credibility over time. And a lot of today's civil society leaders in Nigeria are still people who built their name from that back then. People like Kole Shetima and other people like that who worked with the women's rights movement as well as other rights organizations at the time. But the second the democracy came or was impending, suddenly your ability to organize 500 people, 1,000 people, people across the country became useful. You understand what I'm saying? And because it became useful, because suddenly these people suddenly now need votes, right? Suddenly that became currency that could be traded.
All right.
And as such, that then kind of dictated kind of changed that whole environment. And you could see that in the political sphere as well.
Okay, let me. Thanks for that line of thought. But let's shift gears a little bit because we want to talk about the history, our development, and our future. So, Fakria, let's talk about our development from your own lens. From your own lens, what does our development look like, and what's holding us back, or what are the things that you feel like we can even do much better at? But from a development standpoint, looking at some of the history lessons we've gotten from Fei earlier, and then just kind of help us frame where you see us in terms of development, and then Fei can piggyback from there because we also want Fei to chime in, and then Sarah can go ahead. So, Fakria, please get started. Let's talk about development, Nigeria's development.
I mean, if you've looked at all of the news and everything happening, and like I mentioned earlier, a lot of my focus when it comes to Nigeria and development is predominantly northern Nigeria. So I mean, when you look
educate us, we want to hear.
Yeah. And when you look at what is sensational right now, it really doesn't. It just shows what is it that we're digesting at the very moment or where we are, but doesn't really showcase us showcase a place or a people that sort of preparing the soil to for the future right now. I think one of and the thing is, we're even within the region, we're very conflicted about our own individual histories as like ethnic groups, as religious groups. um some of the things that we're having to go through and to constantly beat around are things that we've been dealing with for the past 3 decades or so. So I mean, and it mostly has to do with the social fabric of our society. And one really good way to look at things is by looking at media houses like, for example, BBC Hausa, and the kind of things that they're discussing. I mean, all of the progressive news and all of that investments, development, tech, everything that that you see pop out in the news, mostly from places like Lagos and uh, very few other southern cities. But that doesn't necessarily come out of northern Nigeria. And when it does, these things exist in silos. They're very isolated from the rest of the society, right? So we're having to still I mean, this is very much a Nigerian issue, but I mean, specifically to northern Nigeria, we're dealing with things that other regions or other countries would consider what's the word, like aged, would consider something they've had to deal with, a long time ago or centuries ago, and this is exactly where we're at. We're conflicted about, our very current state. One very interesting thing about, you know, especially about, to do with Faye's book that's coming out. One thing that we haven't really agreed on in northern Nigeria is whether, jihad was a religiously motivated movement, right? I mean, if you say that in the north, people will take offense if you say that it was a political move to consolidate power, right? We don't we would be offended if you say that it's colonialism. And just a few days ago, someone made a remark about why SLS is still wearing the gear, the traditional outfit, where he's disrespecting the seat of the king and blah blah. And someone mentioned that the kings that were deposed during the Fulani Jihad, the Hausa emirs across the north still wear their gear, and their people still refer to them as like the king of the emir of Kano and all of that. But the majority would never agree that colonialism is what the jihad essentially was. And these are some of the things that they did to women, to erase cultures and histories in a lot of the regions in the north. So I mean, these are some of the things that, well, even though they're not even a major part of the conversation, we're not even trying to understand where we came from, right? And especially that the north is very much, well, the majority of the north is very much centered around what religion means to us today, right? And this is what I mentioned earlier about how even though everything we are now in terms of religion, we're essentially Saudi, but Saudi has that element of autocracy that is able to, they're able to control how their societies relate with religion. Whereas in Nigeria, you don't have that centralized power. You have clusters of religious bodies that command what is or what isn't. It's like, when you have insurgencies popping up in Saudi Arabia, they would smash it at one go, and they would sort of export elements of that, uh, or push them in exile or something like that, but not really let them sort of flourish within their own society. And in Nigeria, we don't have we don't have that nature of governance, whether within the local government, because I mean, they're very linked, even though they're autocracies, but everything that happens at the very bottom, the local governments or any kind of movement, because of how strengthened elements of their governance, like intelligence and all of that, because of how strong it is, they know, and they know what to crush, and without letting things excel. But in Nigeria, it's completely the opposite. The center is not linked to the local level. And even when it is, we don't really understand why this or this is happening. Because I remember even before Boko Haram turned violent, during Eradua's time, they did not have an understanding of what was happening, even though northern Nigeria produced Metetsine in the early 80s. Having that kind of understanding of history should have sort of alerted them that this is where this might lead to. But because there's that very deep disconnection between understanding or even an articulation of our histories, then we didn't know what to do. We just just kill this guy, and then we're done. Everything is done. But that was, that very neglect of, understanding the very fabric of our society, through our histories, just isn't there. And this is something that we're having to like go through over and over again, because when you try to understand the nature of banditry, and tracing them to pre-violent times and all of that, you also find that level of disconnect between the state's understanding of where these guys might where this might be going to. So, and when you can't put one and two together, then that's essentially one of the biggest things that we suffer in the north, because most of these insurgencies and cases of insecurities and just this our own nature of religion is very special to us, like as a society.
I have like so many questions, but so that we don't hog the whole thing, Faye, and I don't know, Faye, if you want to add or to whatever Fakria said, but again, to frame it in terms of development. But I sense that you're still going to draw back to the historical context, because even I see a lot of things that has to do with economic disconnect, what the role religion is playing in the region. But please just take it away and talk in the development context. But because I have way too many questions to ask, and I don't want to take over the show. So Faye, just go ahead.
Yeah, so it's some really, really interesting points, especially like, I was smiling when you mentioned the question of whether Danfodio's jihad was a political or a religious movement. It's an interesting question, and
that's a whole book. That's a whole book right there.
Like I said, I'm just going to keep quiet.
Yeah, I think one way we can look at it, I mean, the approach we took is that the story of injustice, right, in Nigeria is a long-running one, right? It's a long-running story, unresolved injustice. The fact that, people bullied. I mean, when you read the book, you see the things that Danfodio complained about, a lot of them will be familiar to you today. I mean, he complained about stuff like you have to pay money to enter the palace to see the king. The people who are the courtiers, they were collecting money. Or somebody.
Oh, is that how people have to pay to know when one minister for petroleum is flying?
An essay or something. Minister or something. He complained about things like that. He complained about
they used to do giveaway then too.
Sorry? Don't complain. They'll be very, very familiar. They complain about somebody will commit an offense, right? It is clear that the punishment for that offense is death, for example. The person will bribe, and then the sentence, the offense will be reduced to maybe pay a small fine.
They try now. At least they didn't let the person go free.
Or a rich man will just take, or you have cows or something, and then the king or a rich person will just come, just take your cows away. Or somebody will just find one offense for you and then take all your cattle. That unresolved injustice. So the context of that is that when somebody comes on the scene, right, and then he's preaching a message of reform and piousness and of justice, right? It does not need, for religion is secondary in that a lot of the people who followed Danfodio, they were not even Muslims, right? But when somebody is preaching a message like that, it resonates when there's a lot of unresolved injustice. So the religious obviously will merge with the political, right? If somebody is he's tapping into, these things that the fact that arbitrary taxes, theft of property, no justice, taking people's wives. And this is a long-running story in Nigeria. Collecting people's wives. I mean, we might laugh about it, but it's a serious issue. It is a serious issue that has gone on for very, very long. So things like that happening, you then get to the point whereby, if you leave that unresolved injustice, somebody who's always going to take advantage of it. It might be an insider, it might be an outsider, but somebody is always going to take advantage of it. And it makes so coming to the question of development, from our own point of view, the view we take in the book is that, look, Nigeria has been a commodity play for a long, long time. And you can we take slaves as a commodity play. It's basically capturing people.
Trying to sell something, yeah.
You're not doing it. You just basically just capture human beings, and then it's when you export them that they go and then maybe start working on farms or somewhere, and then to get rid of slavery, we took palm oil, and then palm oil to crude oil, but where we have, where there's been this
is an interesting point.
So where we see development is a period whereby you focus on human capital development, whereby it's development of people, education, that sort of thing, and forget about commodities will never save us. I think that's one thing we it's a lesson we will learn by hook or by crook. Commodities are not going to save us. So you pass PIB now, maybe
not even if they develop another fast-selling commodity, which we have plenty of them.
To be honest, I'm praying. As in right now, it's a prayer that I'm hoping that another thing will not come and bail us out again.
That's a negative prayer of a.
Because, at the end of palm oil, for example, when palm oil went, crude oil came out from nowhere, and then continued the story.
Rice is coming for you. Don't worry. Rice.
Just only you alone can eat all the rice we have.
So we have to, and you can see this thing, like, what is the difference between a Nigerian and Nigerian abroad? It's one of the things I've been talking about lately is that
you have as much rice as you want.
One of the things I've been talking about lately is that the way Nigerians are, we might not be a manufacturing superpower, right? But when it comes to the arts, I don't know, you almost pick somebody from the streets in Nigeria, just as a nobody. And the gap from that person to world class is not very, very, very far.
It's not.
We cannot make microchips, we cannot make silicon chips, we cannot make, all this, or advanced, we cannot make advanced airplane engines. The gap from where we are to get to that level of, world class is quite
creativity.
When it comes to the arts or the creative arts and those, the gap is not far at all. Somebody will just come from Nigeria, literally from nowhere, and it's only a few steps. So there's something, somebody was even joking. I was joking with somebody and he said that part of Nigerian madness is actually maybe it's artistic expression. The kind of crazy things we do that even Nigerians don't understand. It's just another. But I think there's something there. There's I don't see any other kind of development that's possible beyond the fact that we start to look at human beings as our biggest resource, right?
I completely agree.
Buhari has been
a bedrock
since 2015.
Absolutely.
Can you name one major education reform apart school feeding? That's it.
Faye, don't do it. Faye, don't do
it. You to go enter farm. Go enter farm. Go enter farm.
After all, you're able, but
I don't want to penny like this.
Actually, I have a question here.
Please go ahead.
So is it that what drives Nigerians is anything they can are things where they can self-develop themselves to drive excellence or all of that? Because when we look at all of the advanced industries abroad, all of these advanced economies, is that from the military industrial complex revolutionizing technology in the US, the industrial all of that, most of them are like government or heavy private sector led initiatives. So is it that the absence of that in Nigeria creates that huge gap of being unable for the average Nigerian to catch up with all of the tech and all of that in advanced countries, and that these things that can be self-taught or something that you just find in you, that you can sort of train yourself to excellence, that Nigerians have the ability to excel in within Nigeria. So these two things.
It's a lack of choice, I think. I mean, it's a lack. I mean, what options do you have? To develop yourself, what options do you have? You have to do it yourself. There's no, are you going to are you going to wait for government to do government schools? They're not. I mean, they're not developing anybody. So it's almost something that's been forced on Nigerians. There's no option. So you find people, and now you have to learn out. You just have to teach yourself anything if you want to really know something. And it's unfortunate because if you have a system whereby the way to get ahead is to teach yourself, then some people have an inbuilt advantage, that can never be closed, which is unfortunate. So, I mean, if you live in a house where your parents are educated, I mean, the words you will hear, the things you will, that gap just cannot.
The gap is already too big.
I cannot bridge that gap anywhere, my brother. Anywhere, my brother. You can't bridge that gap.
That's
This is
true.
why we need to do something. We need to go at it hard and level that field so that it doesn't become something whereby you have to teach yourself to do it. Let's give everybody that chance. I always say there are software engineers in Nigeria today that are conductors. You are not going to find them. You are not going to find them if you teach yourself.
Wait. Justin, please. I didn't use to respond.
Probably not in the direction that you're expecting, weeps like you. But I want to lay on top of what Faye has said in response to what Fakria asked. Now, Faye, you're very correct. What Fakria has observed in the one leg of our question is basically a survival mode response, right? People have to bootstrap because what are the options? But going back to the flip side of the question, which is what are the development options here? Is it that all we have is the areas where you can self-develop versus the industrial complexes that have been developed in other countries, the countries where our young people are picking up and jetting off to, right? Development is something you have to be intentional about. And this is the failure of the class of 66 that's off to my mic the first time. So I'm back to that point. We have the only thing they've been successful
we have to
as
make
a generation.
Class of 66 shirt, right?
Oh, yeah, we do. Not in celebration anyway. The only thing that they have successfully done. Yes, old men. The only thing they have successfully done is the constructive deconstruction of the country, right? Development doesn't come by happenstance. We're not going to stumble into it. We're not going to stumble into it. Even the tech industry, since that's the example that Fakria used, all of the big, if you look at the FAN, right, the big tech companies, we like to call them private sector players, but they're actually not. They are funded by the US, largely the military industrial complex, right? Go and look at Facebook's first investors. Go and look at Google. Today we are talking about Tesla is making waves in the auto manufacturing and in the energy storage space. Who is funding the research?
Their biggest customer
right?
is the US government. Yeah.
Who is the biggest? So these things don't happen by chance.
The army, absolutely.
The unfortunate thing with the survival mode we're in, which is where everybody is teaching themselves how to code, which is a good thing, I encourage it, is there's a phrase I like to use. At the end of the day, we're all farming in someone's farmyard, in someone's plantation, right? We're all learning to code, we're all learning product managers, product designers, blah, blah. We do not have the infrastructure to leverage those skills for our own advantage. So everybody's learning to go code so that they can go and work at Google or Microsoft or everywhere, which is good. But the context of the conversation for me is what is ultimately going to lead to development here. here,
Okay,
right?
okay.
And
I also ask
until
for
we
you a
become
question.
intentional about it. Yeah.
So, okay. I used to. So one of the things I always like to do is, we know all our problems, but I know that there was at some point things used to work a certain way, even if it's primitive times or like people will talk about financial inclusion. And like before all this fintech or back in the day, people used to financial transactions used to happen, however it used to happen. So I want to take that into the context of development too. They used to Nigeria. In fact, this whole mess about not that amalgamate. In fact, from the British being interested in Nigeria, a lot of it had to do with trade. So some things used to work development wise, right? To how everything else started. From a historical context, fee, um, would you say that at some point back then Nigeria was developed, and why was it developed?
Nah.
Sorry, Bola, what did you say? What was
Well,
developed?
Nigeria,
Nigeria.
or not Nigeria, the regions. Let me use the region, not Nigeria, because it was not a country then, not one country then. But
Well, I
how?
mean, it depends on how you view development. So there are obviously advances in, there were advanced civilizations, if you like, organized societies. So the Oyo Empire, there was a coherent system of government. People understood what it was about. Then, I mean, there were, like I mentioned, the caliphate as well. It was organized, but then it depends on who you were. So slavery is a long running story in our country, in Nigeria. It's our reality. So I mean, a lot of people were, I mean, if you were a slave.
Do you want? Sorry, Faye, do you want to distinguish between chattel slavery and slavery in general? So we
Yeah,
don't
so yeah, that's an
confuse
interesting.
people.
It's an interesting point that always comes up. So I always say, we know about American slavery, right? We know. I mean, we've seen it in movies. We know,
Mm,
we know what the life of a slave in America and American plantation was like. We know the brutality of it. We've seen it. We know what it was like to the journey, the Middle Passage. The ships. We watch Amistad. We watch 12 Years a Slave. We don't really know much about, and we have not seen, a comparable. Now, Nigerian slavery, one of the things people argue about is that slaves in the Nigerian context had social upward mobility. And, they have a point. I mean, Sir Ahmadu Bello, his mother was a slave, so there was that mobility. I think, but I always say that that's not the correct comparison to make. If you're comparing, say, the life of a slave in Nigeria to the life of a slave in America, maybe they were beating slaves. They were beating slaves in America. I don't know. Were they beating slaves in Nigeria? The correct comparison. I think they were brutal in different ways. And I think the real nastiness of the local slavery we had was the raiding. So in America, for example, during slavery, if somebody in Georgia wanted slaves, for example, he won't get on a horse and with guns and everything, and then go and raid somewhere in Alabama or Mississippi or something, and then just catch people and enslave them. American slavery was very much infused with capitalism. So if you wanted slaves, you buy. I mean, there was even renting of slaves. You could rent a slave to do, you could rent slaves to do work on your farm, and then return them after a while, that sort of thing. So that's them. But in Nigerian context, there was, I mean, you just basically get on your horse, go to one small community, just throw fire on their roof, catch people, and that was it. So that raiding was a very, very, very brutal affair, and because of the way it was done, it has serious implications. So he encouraged, for example, he encouraged, for example, to people to go and hide in small communities where you will not be raided. And you can still see patterns of that today, whereby sometimes, I travel in Nigeria and I just see, you just be traveling. I remember the last time I went from Kaduna to Abuja by road, and right in the middle of nowhere, just random place, you just see a small village where people are living.
community.
And you're wondering that even in the Abuja, the people that are living beside the government, development is struggling to reach them. When is it going to come to a place like this? So we've had people disperse. He formed, he informed the way people, live. And to be honest, after a while, you just go and find one small community and hide there, even if it's a rock or in a mountain or somewhere, at least that way nobody will come and disturb you. So that's just one effect. And then obviously the lack of trust as well. That thing, it really did a number on us. It really badly damaged us because, the thing with slavery is that you cannot breed slaves, right? A woman, if you are lucky, she'll she'll probably have twins in a year, right? She cannot have, you cannot turn her into a baby making machine. At best, one a year. Even if you somehow, get her to be having, she'll have one a year. Now that one child,
take a while to.
Exactly. You cannot, a baby is not, you cannot sell a baby as a slave. It is, the person has to grow up, and there's no substitute for that. You need time, 15 years at least. So maybe you grow into to a decent age. So you cannot really, there's only so much you can do about a process like that. It's not like breeding cattle or something, or pigs or whatever. So what happened was that obviously as demand increased from across the Atlantic, it then made people come up with all sorts. So you find situations where the elite will just come up with some random law. They just change the law and say the new offenses, just create new offenses, and then the punishment, of course, is slavery. Or we had the famous one, the Arochukwu one, where somebody will they say, okay, they're throwing you into the mouth of the shrine. For the shrine, you have become food for the shrine, and then obviously the shrine had an opening at the back, whereby then you're the ship. So and then there was trickery. Some researchers showed that up to 30% of people who were captured as slaves were tricked. And again, because of the violent nature, you trick somebody into slavery and you sell them in exchange for guns to protect yourself. So you have this whole vicious cycle whereby, because you don't want to be raided, at least if you sell somebody for slavery,
you're protecting yourself.
Protecting yourself from it. So that thing did so when we compare, we know how the American one was brutal. It was brutal in Nigeria, but in a different way. Which is what I try to tell people that. So we need to grapple a bit with, what our own version, has done to. In terms of plantation slavery, there were plantations all over, pretty much all over Nigeria. But it was crop share. You are a slave to somebody. Okay, go and farm the place. Whatever you produce, collect 10% of it or something. If you don't produce anything, obviously you're your own. But so it was kind of, that was slightly maybe different from America, where they were promising slaves land or whatever, and then they never got or slaves could never rise beyond a certain level. So I think it's a real legacy for us, and we should never really forget that slavery in Nigeria did not end until 1933. That was the year when, we could say, okay, we stamped this thing out, at least in the raw form of it. It was in 1933-ish, thereabouts. That was when, it was finally stamped out as, and that's recent. I speculate, I tell people, I speculate that, look, the idea of paying people for work, so employing somebody and paying them for work, is a very, very recent thing in Nigeria. Before that, what you had is either slavery or timeshare or crop share. But the idea that you hire somebody and maybe pay them, it's a very new thing.
Oh, wow.
So which is why I said maybe that is why, this business of owing salaries is so common in Nigeria. An excuse. I'm not, if you have workers, pay your workers. This is not an excuse. But I'm just saying that, it is such a recent thing that maybe
the owing salary thing, we had a different theory about it. Well, the theory we had was that most of the higher ups really don't depend on their salary, so they don't even know when salary is paid. So So why should they be
Well,
worried
it's
about?
possible. Yeah, it's possible.
Some of
Yeah.
But there's also the really boring, really elementary reason, which is that most states are insolvent and don't have money. And in Nigerian civil service, you can't quite fire people. So,
Saratu,
I mean, something's got to give. I mean, you have the role, but you may not get your money.
Saratu,
So.
on paper,
But like, I mean,
that
interesting theory.
that
I'm just saying
statement
they're
is
just not
only
really
true on
boring.
paper.
which statement?
It's
I mean,
only, it's
they
only
don't
true on
bring a lot
paper.
to the private sector as well.
That states
I
are
do want
insolvent
to
is only true on
remember,
paper because by definition, government can print money and there'll be money.
Oh, there you go again.
Bola.
I'm talking about I'm talking about state governments. I'm not thinking about federal civil service.
All right, guys.
Sure.
Hold on a
I say
second.
it's a lie. Go and look at their convoys. You know whether they're insolvent.
Yes,
Just
sir, no
Whether they get
problem.
money to fund it.
Just wait.
No problem, sir.
Let's-
No problem.
Wait. Let's bring Fakria in.
Yeah.
You had a point.
I just wanted to add to what Faye said. I remember an excerpt that Faye actually posted about the textile industry. And I think it was written by a former colonial administrator or manager about the textile industry. Yeah.
Over the World Bank, yeah.
About the industry in northern Nigeria, and how now you find all of the state governments like in Kaduna and Kano revering this golden age of textiles that we had in northern Nigeria, and then you look at this other picture that has been painted by the guy from the World Bank saying that this has never been a success. In fact, it was a massive failure. And somehow history has been revised to show you that we flourished. And you can't help but think, okay, the Grand Pyramid might have been that too, because if it was something that was really successful, it might have progressed into something else. If it was something that was managed effectively, it might have been something else today, but there are no traces of that. And especially in northern Nigeria, and one other thing that I've always found quite surprising, that not a lot of people in northern Nigeria talk about. A lot of people know, but I think this was during the structural adjustment days when foreign companies were trying to import their own products. And what they did, and at that time the policy was becoming favorable to them, but what they did, they essentially got some of the northern Nigerian elites, they paid them off to buy out the current manufacturing industries, especially in some parts of Kano called Bombay. And they would buy these factories and they would shut them down. And of course, people, these foreign companies were importing cheaper products into northern Nigeria. So I mean, it made economic sense to the consumers, but this was some shady deal that the elite were doing. They were getting paid to buy out these companies and shut the factories. But then the thing was, the government wasn't there to offer any level of protection to any of these for the jobs, not even for the companies, but for the jobs that were stripped. And these people were not placed in better jobs, did not find better jobs. These are people that after generations and generations just really languished without anything, became traders, became just nothing.
Interesting. It's an interesting point, actually. It got me thinking about a lot of different things. Saratu, you've not really chimed in on the development thing. You're a development professional. You
Yeah,
go-
I was enjoying what Kriya and Faye was saying. And I basically just agree with them. I think that in general, any industry where very little value is being added, that's how you know that things are not as great as people are telling you it is. I mean, we are not. If you are not adding value, these are raw products. For goodness sake. Granite is granite. Are you making peanut butter? Are you turning it into granite oil? What are you doing with it? It's just dead. Granite pyramid my foot. I don't just hear what Jerry. Like these things are just very annoying.
You can't be quiet. They're attacking your people though.
Who is your people that they are attacking?
It actually really annoys me when we have such a dearth of imagination. You know, if you think about palm oil, yes, food you can use to make banga, but beyond that, you know, the commercial use case for palm oil, it spans things that we don't even think about.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why Indomie and Co and people who make noodles in Nigeria probably do not buy. This is a wild guess, but I'm almost certain, 100% certain that they do not achieve every single thing that Nigeria, every single use all the palm oil that they get, because you know, for example, it is palm oil that gives the noodles their color. The Indomie noodles, we use palm oil for that. We use palm oil in cosmetics, face creams, and everything. We use them for a whole bunch of things. But the thing with Nigeria is that Nigeria can barely afford enough palm oil for the food markets. Barely. In fact, not even barely. We cannot. Now, for the more lucrative commercial markets, with all those other uses where you can sell your palm oil, of a certain grade to these companies, we're not even touching the surface. So a lot of these people have to import palm oil. So when people tell you, "Oh, Nigeria is importing palm oil," no. You're not looking at the numbers. If you look at the numbers, you would understand perfectly well why we import palm oil. But we have palm oil in Benin, but not enough. Not enough. So like the same thing with things like, sorry, it's not. Faye is laughing because I feel like we've had problem before in another class. Like,
it's just frustrating.
All the oranges in Benue are rotting away. Of course they're rotting away. Jesus. Like, anyway. Sorry,
sorry for poking
Goodness sake.
There's one chart of share.
So how are you talking about development when you're not thinking of adding value? We don't add value to human beings, and we don't add value to things. How do you want to develop?
Wait, Saratu, do you know what they're going to tell you now? That's why we say you should go and farm.
Saratu, you just open the door. You open the door.
Okay,
on the farming thing, they keep talking about farming, but what we really should talk about is agribusiness. Because the ones he's talking about is not.
That's my rant.
The ones he's talking about is not smallholder farming. If you want to get commercial, you need like thousands and thousands and thousands of acres. Justin, they said that you are a troll. You need thousands and thousands of acres to do a lot of things. But then some other people on the other side of the argument will be like, but we have infrastructure deficits. So you are saying, oh, we're not doing enough of this. Eventually, all of this points to government as well. But you're saying we're not.
Let me ask Saratu a question. So let me ask her. I mean,
we're not going to private sector our way out of our questions. Government has to govern. They have to do their jobs. And that's the biggest fear I have, to be honest. Because if you do work at the federal is even better than some states. We complain about federal all the time. But look, some of these states, you go fear. It's really the challenges. I'm serious. The governance challenges in Nigeria are dire. They're dire.
Even the vice president is shocked.
Justin, please. Let me ask the question.
Don't get me started.
No, don't start, please. Yeah,
no, I'll start with a question about agriculture. So if I give you $1 billion now, right, and it was what is the most efficient place you put it into Nigeria? And when I talk about efficient, I'm talking about somewhere that maybe is already like 20, 30, 40% of the way there, so there's something big, something valuable you can build on. I mean, where would you put that? I mean, based on what you've seen, like what are we doing right in a small way whereby, some additional resources can then, get us to world class, if you like.
Free consulting, please.
I'll charge you people by the dollar. But so the reason why that's a question is that the challenges differ from one value chain to another, right? I was telling someone the other day that if you see someone saying or focusing on agriculture without telling you which value chain, they're not serious. Just forget about them. They're not serious. Just ignore them, walk away, have a drink, relax. They're not serious people. Now, from all the main cash crops that we have, things like yam value chain, palm oil, cassava, maize, all of these things. There are some that I think are frankly don't even bother. But there's some others that I would say that really the issue is improving our productivity, and and also improving the way that we add value. So if you take, I would narrow down the number of value chains. For example, we don't need to be in cotton value chain. What are we doing cotton for? For goodness sake, why? You're there's things that we can do better. So palm oil again. Let me just go back to palm oil. Most of people who do palm oil do not have access to machine harvesters, right? So what does that mean? That means that majority of the palm fruit is still there on the tree. The longer it stays on the tree, the more it dries out. The more it dries out, that's efficiency you're losing. That's productivity you're losing. So at that level, and people are still going and climbing trees and cutting it off by hand when they don't have access to mechanized harvesters, which is actually quite often, unfortunately. So that's already an efficiency loss there, right? You're probably leaving 30% of the palm fruits that should be harvested on the trees. Now that's one part. Then another part now, the palm oil, the making of the palm oil itself. It's so inefficient that when you walk into a place, most places that make palm oil, you walk and there's oil all over the floor. That tells you something. That tells you that this is wasting. Ideally, if you go to Indonesia, when you see the most efficient of palm oil, it's dry. The floor is dry, and when you touch the fibers, it's so dry that you can use it as hay. That's how dry it needs to be. We usually do not achieve that unless in the small percentage of large scale commercial actors who the palm oil producers who actually produce palm oil for exports and all that. But that's not even that many actors, very few, maybe like four companies or maybe 5 companies that do that at a decent enough scale. So now majority of the local actors, that actually make palm oil, are smallholder farmers some of them in huge corporations, some of them in much smaller operations. But imagine if a situation where you're able to address those efficiency gaps. Imagine if you're able to create improved access to technology at different levels to plug in those productivity gaps. Now, in most countries, the biggest problem that Nigeria has is that our farmers are not organized, which also means that smallholder, so I think NERSOL only has 6,000 farmers associations on its books, which is a criminal because Nigeria has way more farmers, than and way more even associations. Only 6,000. So number one, we don't have records. We don't have we don't even know where our farmers are, and we don't know how to reach them. But then if you understand the key value chains and you're able to plug in those different productivity gaps, that will actually go a long way. Because already you would increase productivity, which will better enable our smallholder farmers access to commercial markets, which is and that access to markets is a major reason why our farmers are poor. That's a major reason.
So extension agents.
If you ask most extension agents are important, yes, but not the way that we are doing it now. ADPs they just can't work. That huge government system where you have people on motorcycles going from one town to another, it doesn't work that way. Ideally, you want a situation farmers will actually pay. People don't understand this about farmers, though. The farmers I work with, and I've worked with farmers all over the country. I've done work in the Niger Delta, and now I'm working in the north. Farmers will pay. If you tell them, if you give this amount of money, you will get this amount of fertilizer. Say, oh, okay, cool, I'll pay. They will pay. If you say drop this money, we will actually provide you with access to extensionists. They will actually pay. The problem is that government promises one thing, delivers another. So why would they pay? They don't. Bring the thing first.
Trust.
You understand? Because that goes back to the trust issue that Feyi talked about earlier. They don't trust you. That's the reason. That's more the reason. But once you've been able to build trust systems, then they'll actually be more willing to pay. I've seen it happen, so I can actually argue that. You understand what I'm saying? But to answer Feyi's question more directly, I would identify, number one, what are the value chains that you're trying to target, and where are the efficiency gaps? Address those two things. Address that efficiency gap. Just go in there and say, okay, access to improving productivity. How do you improve productivity? Improve productivity there, and you'll see magic happen. That's pretty much it for me. Activity and improve value addition, because that's also processing as well. That's packaging, that's access to market. That's getting the companies that need, for example, people like Honeywell who are making noodles. If you create good quality crude palm oil, and it's good enough for Honeywell to buy, and Indomie, this Tolaram to buy, all these people to buy. That's great now, and and people are able to get it at a decent amount, good quality stuff at a decent amount. You might actually be able to improve, access to markets, and you're able to improve the way that we add value in this country. Our inability to add value and our poverty are not accidents. There's a reason why both things happen at the same time.
But okay, so first of all, I need to. Because anytime I try to get guests and they ask me how long will this take, and I say 1 to 2 hours. Just so you know, it's almost 2 hours now.
What?
We've been on for almost 2 hours now.
Faye, did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Faye, did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did.
Yes. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Sarah, can you hear us?
Yeah. Now I can hear you. Sorry, third world internet. No offense.
All right. So what I was gonna say was, when we try to get the guests, everybody complains about the time being too long. Or we've been on for almost 2 hours now. One more thing we want to touch on, and this could be in form of your closing statement as well. I just want everybody to say 5 to 10 years in your own estimation, or out of your own, what you hope for Nigeria in the next 10 years. 10 years is I think is fine. What does the future hold for Nigeria in your own estimation in the next 10 years? For 10 years from now?
I missed 80% of
I don't understand your question. No.
You don't understand my question.
Is it what you hope for, or what your prognosis is based on where we are today?
You know what?
But they're different.
You know what? It's everyone's choice. Either you want to say what you hope for or what your prognosis is.
You're behaving like Nigerian president. You don't know what you're to ask us.
Everybody already thinks I'm a politician, so it's okay. I don't want to constrict everyone to a particular line of thought. So I want you to kind of do it however you want. Either you want to talk about what you hope for or what your prognoses are for the next 10 years. It's up to you.
Okay, let me start. I think that Justin mentioned quite a lot the class of '66.
Justin.
I think that one thing I think is that Buhari is the last of an era. So 2023 change.
Justin does not agree.
Change is guaranteed. I don't know whether it's change for the better or change for the worse, but change is guaranteed. So, there's no more, they've run out of people in that class, right? So, to be honest, if not for Goodluck Jonathan, we had almost broken away from that era, because Goodluck Jonathan was a post-Civil War president. So he came of age after the Civil War, and it was an opportunity for us to break with that era. Unfortunately, like I like to say, sometimes dead cats, they bounce, right? So he messed things up, and then Buhari came back, and so I think we are closing that era. TY is not going to come and become president, so whatever happens in 2023, we'll get some level of it transfer from one era to another. Now, it doesn't mean that change will happen, or the change, or it might be change for the better, for worse. But so I think we're at a pivotal point in the sense that almost like another 1999. So right in 1999, right, Abacha died in 98. Nobody believed that the transition was real or was going to happen. So there was a lot of sit-down look. People were like, these people are not serious. And then the space was left open for people whose only qualification was what we call mind. The people who just had mind. That look at someone like Tinubu. I remember those days. Back then. Ibori's advert. I remember in '99 back then was 100 computers in 100 schools in 100. Those kind of. Nobody really checked anybody. We didn't really check who anybody was. Buhari,
everybody thought the army was coming back anyway.
Yeah. So a lot of people.
The apathy was there. We're like, they go soon come back.
They didn't believe. They just kept quiet. And the people who are just bold, all they had was just boldness, and they took charge of it. We had a Senate president who was a convict. He claimed he was his twin brother. We had the House of Reps speaker.
Oh God! That way.
We still have instances of those things today.
No, we do.
Just to be clear, we still have instances of those kind of things today.
You see how people are getting tackled now, in court and something. Now people hold it on. They know now, and then once it's the right time, they just, but back then, we're generally kind of taken by surprise. And the people who came in that 99, some of them really leveraged it into some. Look at Tinubu, 20 years. It's dominating the scene. Now he wants to be president and all that kind of stuff. So I think we had that transition period. I feel like almost, not like we might not notice it, but maybe 2023 or thereabouts will be another kind of end of the Civil War era. End of the Civil War, guys. After the Civil War, the people who won, they pretty much just parceled the country. They parceled the country among themselves. They shared, and they had a good run. They dominated the whole space, whether through military rule or democracy. So we are coming to the end of that era because there's nobody left. So their time out. So now I don't know what's going to happen, but I think we should view it as that, as a potentially in another transition type of thing, and we should be on our guard. And people should be. A lot of us need to lose our fear in certain ways. We need to summon a bit of courage and understand that every Nigerian's passport is the same color of green. We all have a right, to have a say of some sort over the affairs of our country. And we want the country to be a better place. So I think and I'm speaking to myself as well. Some of us, a lot of us need to lose our fear to find our voices and to be ready. Because, like I said, I've said this a lot of times, Buhari is a very unusual president because he is bulletproof. In certain ways, his aura, that mega scare thing, nobody has been able to successfully attack it.
I have a feeling you have a book on Buhari coming.
No. But he's been able to hold on to that aura to the point whereby he's almost immune to criticism. You can protest. You won't answer.
Yeah, but you know how they say that when somebody is too verbose, if you leave them alone, when they talk for long enough, they will talk themselves into a hole. Yeah. I think that's happening now. The mystique is unraveling. The mystique is unraveling because he's finally gotten. He's finally gotten into office, right? And now we don't tell him, do now. Say you did sidelines since they jog. Now.
It's clear that he had no. It's clear that he had no. It's clear that, but he's going to finish his 3 years in office. But I think that whoever is coming next, my point is that whoever is coming next is not going to have any kind of bulletproof aura. Who is the best?
I agree. I totally agree.
You know,
Absolutely agree.
and we should be ready for that. You know, we should be ready to challenge. You know, and we should not wait for somebody to come and then just come and almost kind of like. I mean, one thing Buhari does is that Buhari he has really drained energy from his enemies. The guy doesn't really, you know. I mean, he will drain your energy and you just be tired. You know, but the next person, I don't think the next person is going to have that luxury. So again, you know, in keeping with the theme of the fact that power is going to change hands in more ways than we might realize.
Than
So I hope
expected.
that, you know, I mean, I hope, you know, I mean, I'm always, I always say Nigeria is due some good luck. You know, look at all the countries in Southeast Asia, in that neighborhood. You know, the reason why Lee Kuan Yew was in Singapore and not Indonesia is not something you can really explain.
But wait, am I hearing this well? This is a very optimistic for you.
No. I'm saying that. Look, the reason why you had somebody like Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore who pretty much dragged this country to development, kicking and screaming, and not in other countries, you can't. It's not something you can really explain. It's not luck. You know, some countries just get lucky. You know, the reason why Botswana had Seretse Khama and not somebody who just carried all the diamonds in the country and just pocketed them for himself. Sometimes, like somebody's like one article I read one time, you know, one development ago, he said, look, sometimes people are just good. You know, so I feel like I've been saying that Nigeria is due some luck. You know, you just get somebody who just decides, you know, he just gets there and just say, you know what, whatever.
You know what you don't do.
I'm just going to do what I think is the right thing. You know.
But it's not that easy, Shabba.
No, it's not that easy. It's not that easy. So, you know, like I'm just saying that, you know, we're due some luck. We don't try. You know, it's you know, this bad luck after bad luck at some point you roll the dice.
Justin is like, all right. So
yeah, that's me. Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to hold you guys too long. Sarah, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I agree with you. I like the line. Now, look, get us past because I don't know how we want to do it. I'm not seeing any positive signs. There's nothing positive. Our culture is one that facilitates this kind of, you know, avaricious leadership. Abuse of power is normalized across all facets of our society. So, honest to God, like we've normalized and internalized so much bullshit that I'm not really sure where the ray of sunshine is going to come from. You know, unless it's just God just said, okay, fine. I've turned this whole country to Job. It's time for you to finally get up. Okay, fine, Job. It's enough suffering for you. Like, walai, that's the only thing, because I don't know I want to do it. Walai, I don't know I want to do it at all. The signs are not good anywhere. And it depresses me to say this because my job is basically like to sell optimism. But today I'm not very optimistic. Come back tomorrow. That's just where I am right now. I do hope that our luck turns. We are due good luck. I hope God hasn't decided that another 50 years is our portion. Otherwise, I don't know, man. But in addition though, where I'm not optimistic about Nigeria, I think that there is some hope for Nigerians, you know, us as people. I do want to believe that we are not, you know, that we are a little bit too resilient. That's our problem. We definitely deserve ease, but we are a little bit too resilient. We always survive. There's nothing that Nigeria can throw at us that we cannot survive. That's not a good thing. I'm just saying. But we will survive. We'll be fine. In whatever shape or form we eventually end up at on the other end, we'll be fine. But I do hope that much more than just surviving, that we can actually thrive for once.
All right, Fakaria.
So it goes like you know what you what you want to you invest now to see a tree spring. You plant a seed and in 20 years you have a tree, and as optimistic as well. I mean, it's actually nice to hear, Faye kind of sees a light at the end of the tunnel, which is like 2 3 years away. But I mean, you like, for example, look at the news today that about Teachers Day, that they've gifted teachers a salary.
Justin, why all this laughter? Just say it. This is why I'm tired of you. Eh? You be laughing at Nigeria like it's not your country. Eh? I
So
mean, is it?
it's not
Fakria, please continue what you were saying. Don't mind the rude interruption from Bola.
and this is not really unique to one sector. I mean, we're not seeing any sort of radical change, or even the voices um, proposing something incredible, something intelligent in any of the sectors, whether the health, education, whatever it is. We're not seeing. We're not really seeing anything on the side of the government. What we're seeing is the decline of quality, because it's like, okay, these guys that left office a decade ago have done something that we've managed to be resilient with today, like the people of the reforms after post military era. And then you had some quality people that have revolutionized some sectors in the last administration. But then we haven't seen anything of that nature with this administration. And so it's no seed in sight. I mean, but the one thing that I'm not sure if it's peculiar to now, or this is something that happened during the military era, is that collectivism um within society, like we've seen with campaigns like NSARS and all of that, that people are increasingly becoming more vocal and angry. But then it's probably because the basis for that is not really political, but more well, it's not it's something that we can all come and agree that, okay, we do not deserve this kind of violence, so we're gonna speak about it. But I mean, we're as a people, like, I mean, our generation are now learning to become more vocal about things that affect us. And I don't know if that stops at the point where we cease to become disadvantaged, or because these people are against this particular policy, or this reaction from the government, because it doesn't serve their rights. So, and when of course they find themselves in a better position, then this wouldn't bother them anymore. So I mean, it's like, is it gonna come from the people being more vocal and be more involved, or if it's gonna come from the government, then there's literally no hope on that end. But I mean, what can we push as a collective? But then we don't see ourselves as a united entity. Everyone is motivated by what affects them and what affects the area which they live in. So how do we come to a consensus that this system does not serve us, so we're going to rise against it, and we're gonna push for something that serves us collectively? Because I mean, as long as we're so divided on issues, and so divided in our understanding of what might actually benefit us, our futures, then I mean, it seems quite bleak. So
Interesting. Someone just let me read this comment. The last time Nigerians were this vocal and united was pre-independence. I'm not sure if we're united,
I mean,
but
we had I think the fuel subsidy what was the name of this thing? During Jonathan's era. I mean, we saw unity. Occupy, yeah, Occupy Nigeria. We saw, unity there, but then somehow, we lost it when these guys got office, and then everyone lost hope. It's like, no, I'm never gonna be part of a collective movement again. I mean, most of the people that were at the forefront, were deeply disappointed that they don't want to be part of anything now. And this is the same thing with revolution now. Like, why are we gonna follow some guy that we have no respect for, that we do not believe in, and all of that. So, and that's the thing, we're waiting for someone to lead us, but then we're very pessimistic about whose leadership to follow, because I know as hell, like, most people I know are never going to follow Shori.
Okay, so so that we don't extend this show to another 1 hour, let's just leave it there. Thank you guys so much for joining. We really appreciate you guys' contribution today. This was a very engaging show. Justin,
Yes,
are you out of words? Are you out of words, or are you gonna?
You say we shouldn't say anything again now.
Who says so?
Well, this is my take on the question that you had asked. So I'm also optimistic. And my optimism comes from a place of, listen, you can only have so much of a bad run. That's the same thing as we need some good luck, yeah? But then again, I'm pragmatic about these kind of things. Faye is right, we're at an inflection point. The next round of politicking, the next round of elections, the next time we go to the polls to select the people that will represent us is going to be a watershed moment, because we've learned a lot of things in the past 8 years, in the past decade. Everybody now knows, first of all, that you can't afford to be apathetic about these issues. We used to be very apathetic about it. Now everybody feels the pinch. Everybody knows that not participating carries a price. That's number one. Number two, the guard is changing, right? Like you said, the class of 66, my arch enemies are being, by a fluxion of time, they are expiring. So, but that is not Uhuru, because they haven't been idle. They've created a coterie of enablers and co who are hoping to step into their shoes. So we can't afford another Babangida era
to
kind
continue.
of let them just do their thing. No. And then we have to think about the down ballot positions at the polls. Everybody is focused on presidency. Guys, you have to bother about the quality of people representing you at the local government level. You have to bother about the people going to represent you at the various legislative houses and levels. It's very important. Where luck comes in is, if we do get that one person at the center, listen, if they could build Dubai in 1 generation, we can turn Nigeria around in 1 generation. Right?
There you go with that Dubai thing. You know, all the politicians, I'll do Dubai in Lagos. I'll do Dubai in
No. That's not remotely that's not remotely what I'm saying.
I know, but I just have to say
what
that.
I'm saying. The point I'm making is, no matter how bad it looks, because a lot of people have given up that, this thing can never work. Listen, there are no problems we have in Nigeria today that can be fixed in 1 generation. If one policy decision of privatizing telecoms,
I agree too.
if one policy decision of privatizing telecoms opened, if we hadn't done that, we wouldn't be having this call, right, on this platform. If that one good decision hadn't been taken.
No, you're right.
If one sane-headed person who is not drinking the Kool-Aid just comes along and fixes power, actually does fix power, not these vibes and inshallah that they were telling us that they will do it in 6 months. That one alone
No,
You
you're
understand?
right. You're right because just real quick, let me just add this. Rwanda, for example, had a genocide. They were like literally killing people and cutting people. Like,
11 years ago, thereabouts.
yeah.
Yeah. So
So you're right because I always see people like, oh, not in my lifetime, not in my lifetime, and
uh,
that sentiment too is also a problem. To be honest with you, because the mindset needs to also be uh, not optimistic but also positive towards if we can just get a chance or if we can just find something to me. I personally believe that what will work is also people that are well-meaning be okay to get their hands dirty with these people, find a way to allow to get these people to allow them to get there, and then start to act, then push them out gradually. It's not gonna be. I don't really think it's gonna be like a snap. We can get lucky. Even okay, we have a good leader with all meaning thing that comes in and becomes president. Just turn around and look at the Senate, and then you see that okay, I thought this was our problem, but we have bigger problems. So I am with you, Justin, in that there's nothing you can't really fix if you are really about it.
The problem is that too much has to happen for progress to happen. It's not
That's
just the
true.
president.
That's true.
It's in National Assembly, the government, the governors. It's not. It's there's too. There has to be a confluence of so much good luck. And that's actually the root of my pessimism. We need too much good luck. The way that we want it to.
I don't think we should chuck it
A
down
good
to
president
good
in
luck.
itself is not enough.
I mean, the people standing up and demanding certain things is certainly not good luck. It's certainly not wishes and dreams.
Mm.
If people actually stand up and say no, this is what we want. I mean, so let me
Well,
talk
if you
about
ask me,
something.
Shao, things have changed though. You remember what he said in 1999 when Kidi said order computer? Can you say that now? Or even some of the guys that are sharing wheelbarrow, that people will just come and attack them. Now, I'm not saying that things have moved from better, but what I'm saying is there's certain things we really can't try anymore. Let's be honest. There's certain in politically.
I'm waiting for
Nice.
I'm waiting for the legislator that will go to his village now and go and dig one borehole and say that he has
No,
done.
yeah,
It will be lynched.
exactly. It's exactly like whether we like it or not. Say that again, Fakria.
I mean, that's what they're still doing, and they're getting away with it.
Not like before though. Not getting away with it like
No,
before. I'm not saying they're not
people
doing
will
it
make
anymore.
fun, but they're still getting away with it. She's right. People will make fun on Twitter, but they're still getting away with it. So
But I
I think
see.
those of us in Lagos will laugh, but in the states they will collect it and they'll do the ribbon cutting for a borehole and
Okay,
nothing will happen.
look at the Edo State
Unfortunately.
Edo State election.
I
Look
was
at
just
the
about to talk about those states.
Edo State election. They were beating people trying to share money. I didn't think, honestly, I didn't think I'll ever see that. They collected the money from the guy and they were beating him. I didn't think that will ever happen. Share money on an election day, the way everybody feels is their birthright. Okay, let's anything. Let me to know that I collected something. And the way anybody tries to share money, they literally chase them away. Like so I get the apathy and I get all that stuff, but from 1999 to now, and they even think about young people running their own enterprises from 1999 compared to now. We're not there yet. We don't have the kind of money. I don't have Tinubu's money. I cannot, but I don't want to sound like tone deaf and say, oh, things are changing. But it's not the same. Let me just put it out. It's not the same.
There's definitely been a shift. No, can't deny that. And the next round of the next political cycle is definitely going to throw up a lot of surprises. That much is
I'm with you on that. All right. So, anyways, we've been on for almost 2.5 hours. Thank you guys so much. This was really good. I can't even wait to go back and rewatch it because the whole thing about legitimacy I don't want to go off the rails, but I feel like that conversation has to happen because I have so many questions about that. But thank you guys so much. This was really good. I really appreciate you guys for coming. When we ask you to come again in the future, please don't run away. Thank you so much. I don't know if you have any just one or two things to say to end, but this is it. Thank you
Faye,
so
when
much.
is the book out? I know your pre-orders are
So
live
it's,
now.
yeah,
When is
so
the
it's
book
out.
actually out?
So it's out in Nigeria this month, from the 22nd of this month. In the UK in January, and in America and Canada, North America in May.
Okay, so the main distributors, the usual suspects will have the book. Where will it be available in Lagos, for instance?
Yeah, it's all the main bookshops. So you can order from Cassava Republic, but it'll be all the main Roving
All
Heights,
the main guys.
Miak, and all that stuff.
Are you doing a tour?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I was planning to be in Nigeria, but this business of where say you have to quarantine for 1 week, I won't have enough time.
For you, it's because you always fight government. Now we can have people that will come and carry you in the airport, but you're always fighting.
So, yeah, the world definitely. I mean, I'll still.
We take him to the farm to go and farm on Nigeria.
Is it? What did you
We
say?
take him to the farm so you can go and work for Nigeria. I said we take him to the farm so you can go and work for Nigeria.
Faye,
Writing book.
Faye, Sonny.
Bourgeoisie.
Yeah.
I have an announcement real quick. So Sonny Yusuf is in the comments. He wants to buy 5 books to give away.
Okay.
Um,
I'll send him. I think he sent me a DM. I was going to reply.
yeah. So, and I think Justin, I think we'll probably think about doing something similar. But we need
So
you to.
the usual stuff, yeah. So we'll do 10.
Okay.
We'll do 10. But the thing is, we would need you to autograph them because we're planning. So, but let's just cast ourselves now. So we've been planning to launch a serious banter book club, and we've just not gotten our act together. So we have books. We have autographed books from.
I have one under my desk right
now.
now.
Bola has seized it. He has used to ship them to Nigeria.
I'll just bring
so
it.
We're just gathering them.
Money.
Chuma Okolo, we've not ordered his, but I remember, let's do.
Yeah,
but Faye will order 10, and so we're just going to have them autographed, and we'll use them for the book club launch, and we'll talk to you about what we're planning to offer.
Cool. That's good.
Me, I've pre-ordered my own, no, so I won't get it till January.
You know, Faye, when I saw
it already.
So I thought it was coming out this month, right? When I went to it and I saw January, I was like, because I was really hoping like, okay, the book is already out. We'll start reading it. I'm like, it was in January. I was like, maybe January for America. And I saw UK to pre-order. I'm like, oh, this guy.
I mean, all these markets. I mean,
it's probably not in your control, right?
Yes, no, we've learned a lot.
No, the publisher's ball.
In fact, please support Bibi Yusuf. She's running. If Cassava Republic does not, we need it. It is infrastructure. Cassava Republic is infrastructure. It is giving us a voice to tell our own stories. And she's running that organization with sheer force of her energy. It's amazing. So we're doing this not just for us, but I'm hoping that people will buy and at least support, because it's very important.
So they own the distributorship across the globe, or you have different.
They own the rights. I mean, if not for her, we might still be hawking the manuscript now, looking for who to, But she, is somebody who can read the story, and she's built it into a serious organization. They have distribution across the world, but it's tough. It's not an easy thing. I mean, in another country, in America, she's the kind of person, one billionaire will just give like $100 million and say, this is my legacy. Just use it. And then,
she must still get that. She will get investors.
Yeah. So hopefully, I'm hopeful that But she's at the moment she's running that organization with her energy and her force, and it's amazing. So I'm hoping, as much as I hope our book will be successful, I'm also hoping that Cassava Republic will
do well.
Yeah, we'll do well. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic.
Amen.
Anybody else has anything else to plug before we sign off? if you're planning to write a book, let us know and come and launch it here. But either way, so I'm gonna go offline now. Look, if you guys still want to keep talking, we can. But I'll end the broadcast now. But thank you so much. This was really good. Next week we want to
Thank
talk
you, everyone.
about law enforcement and the people. So
Thanks for having us.
thank you so much. So we are working on next week's episode. But thank you. See you next week.
Thank you so much.